Well, welcome, Dean.
Thanks.
This is Landlord Confidential.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
No sweat.
Tell us. Let's start with your history. How'd you get started in construction?
I started right after I got out of the military. I didn't really pick the trades. Trades kind of picked me. I started with a custom home builder in 1992 in upstate New York. I started on basically site grading and elevations, kind of like excavation crew. So basically, our job was to, you're in the north country of New York, upstate by Lake Placid, Adirondack Park. So our job was to clear trees, grub, and then go ahead and set elevations for new foundations. Then I went from there to concrete crew, which is basically pouring footings, pouring walls. Then I moved to masonry, block, brick, stone. Went on to framing because I saw I didn't mind doing a lot of the grunt work. Went on to framing after that, and then after a few seasons of getting laid off every winter, went back to interior work. So then I learned how to do interior framing, trim work, drywall, paint, that kind of stuff. Basically finished out kind of pretty much working everything because up there, even GCs are all self-performing. We typically don't hire subcontractors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you have to know how to do everything and do it well. Because you're in the custom space.
Literally starting from the ground up, like learning
literally
everything,
starting
foundations,
yes,
groundwork. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but it was fortunate. I didn't. I knew coming out of high school that college wasn't for me. So learning that way really helped me learn the ins and outs and not just management, but knowing what to look for and how to look for it. And, it's a different skill set of not just being able to build a house, but managing people who can build houses, right? Those are different skill sets. So that's where I was fortunate enough to work my way up through the trades.
So you joined the military right out of high school then?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And what branch of the military?
I was in the Navy, special boat teams. It's regular Navy, but I volunteered for special boat teams in boot camp. So you have to extend for a year, kind of go through some pretty serious training, and then you deploy with SEAL teams. So I did 3 overseas deployments.
With SEAL team? So you're what does that look like?
No. So you're it's actually special boat team. So it's insertion and extraction of SEAL teams.
Okay.
And then coastal patrol and interdiction, that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
So I went on 3 deployments, Middle East deployments, and then my last year I was stationed in the Philippines.
Okay.
I was actually stationed at the embassy. So for Maritime Quick Reaction Force.
Wow.
So,
and how long were you in the military for?
5 years.
5 years. Okay, so you left there in then 92, and that's when you got into the construction
That's
industry.
when I decided, it wasn't really, again, I didn't really pick the trades. Trades kind of picked me.
Yeah.
So, I really enjoyed it. It's one thing I really like seeing the production that you see in a day, kind of seeing you can build things and what things look like from when you started. Basically, you're walking onto a lot, and it's nothing but 60-foot pines as far as the eye can see. And when you're done, it's a custom $2 million home. So
yeah, that's amazing.
Seeing that stuff is really
a lot more fulfilling than writing memos.
Yeah. Although now I'm glad I don't have to do that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be writing memos. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
As you turn the corner towards 60, but
getting tougher on the body.
Yeah, but the trades have always been good to me. It's provided me a good life.
Yeah.
After that, I started my own business in 2004, and I sold that in 2014. I was 46. So I said, you know what, it's time to retire. That lasted probably like 2 weeks.
2 weeks of retirement, you were like, no, this is not for me.
Yeah, definitely not for me. So then I went to work for a multi-state construction company here in Arizona. I started as a project manager. They had some issues with their estimating department, so I went transferred over to the estimating department, kind of revamped the way they were writing and how they were capturing, and then went to lead estimator, then went to director of estimating, and then went to director of operations after that.
Wow.
So I left that company in 2020. Jeff was with Valley Services. They were one of our subcontractors. And he was in the process of purchasing the restoration company. He needed a director for the construction side where they kind of focused energy on buying, rebranding, and rebuilding that restoration division. So I started with them in 2020 as director of operations and was moved to VP of operations of both verticals 2 years ago.
Wow. So you've got a lot of responsibility.
I do, yeah. So we have the construction side, and we also have the restoration side. So it's full mitigation, and then obviously the reconstruction put back too.
Right.
Kind of grew a little bit of the service offerings. We have 2 verticals, but inside of the construction service offering, we are a real estate rejuvenation contractor is how I kind of put it to everybody. We kind of specialize in the space of real estate rejuvenation, REITs, REO, individual investors, and then we also have commercial TI, and we also service retail side of the house too. So we do occupied as well.
That was good timing to specialize in that part of the business. Was that something that you had led the initiative on, or was that?
Yeah, Jeff was they were, ownership was going that way anyways. I mean, they started in 2008 working for a property management company servicing property management side of the house. And they kind of wanted to go that way. But with my experience from Charter Construction Group, we worked with GSEs and kind of local investors. So across the country. So we were in 9 markets when I left. So I had some relationships there and just kind of took what they were doing and then just kind of refocused it and then kind of, basically repurposed what the operations were into the REO and REIT and investor space.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's restoration or REIT or REO or whatever it is construction is construction.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of specialize in real estate rejuvenation because we understand what it is to work in the real estate side of the house. Most contractors that local investors will hire basically are transactional, right? They don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. Whereas we have the experience in the space and we will work with you. Marketing strategies, repair strategies, exit strategies. We understand days to market. We understand carrying costs. We understand the principle of why you repair over replace, why you replace over repair, right?
Yeah.
What a difference between fully repaired and lender required is. So we can kind of help guide, especially the local smaller investor who may not have that much experience in the space, kind of guide them on their repair strategies to make it work for them, to get the most ARV and ROI in the back end.
Yep. So you're walking with an investor mindset. So what does that look like as you're walking through a property? Like, a lot of what we do is, hey, a tenant just vacated this property, walk it, give us an estimate for repairs. So walk us through that process.
So for us, it's knowing your client, right? What is your client's positioning in the space? If it's just a REIT, we understand that it's clean, safe, and functional, right? To get it to the next turn. If it's repositioning, if it's saying, okay, we've had this in a portfolio for 5 to 7 years, we are going to go ahead and go to resale instead of another rent turn. So what do we need to do? What's the market driving right now in this zip code? What's the price per square foot they're listing at? What's the price per square foot they're selling at? What's the price per square foot repaired that I need to get this to reposition it? So we'll kind of walk with the clients and go through that way, depending on where that asset sits in their portfolio, right? It might be a lower performing asset. It might be a high performing asset. So it may be good just to go as is. It may be to the point where it's kind of reached its Title X repairs. So they'll say, we're just going to go wholesale this thing and let it go. And we'll just kind of help them make that decision, answer their questions. And again, because we are RLC registered, we are fiduciary, right? So we're not going to, what's in it for us is the relationship with the client. That's what we're all about, is building relationships. We're not going to say things that just aren't true. We're not going to try and get you to go to the Taj Mahal when quite frankly, it just doesn't need it or doesn't warrant it, right? So that's kind of where we guide our clients in the space.
Mm-hmm. That's the construction side. What's the restoration side?
So the restoration side is full mitigation and restoration. So we do water mitigation, we do fire restorations, clean, and then the reconstruction side of it. So we're cross-functional with our staffing. So our PMs that handle REOs and REITs can handle small to mid loss. We do have specialized PMs that handle extra large loss. That's your large fires, right? That's your flat tops. That's a complete rebuild. That's a very, very specialized skill set. So we have 2 dedicated PMs just to that space, but our other remaining 5 PMs can kind of intermingle between both. And there's a lot of synergy between our processes and applications and techniques that make it possible to be cross-functional amongst both verticals. So we found that to be a lot more, A, it's more profitable, and B, it's better for your team members because they're not just dedicated to, I only do REITs, I only do turns. They basically become bulletproof no matter what the market is doing. They're super valuable because they understand what's going on.
A lot of the biggest thing that comes up for us as every resident moves out of our property, we're turning it, and it seems like painting is having to be done more often than not, right? So as a contractor, when you're walking through a property and you're seeing, certain walls with blemishes and stuff, where is your mindset at between touch-up painting, which is a dirty word in the industry, versus partial paint versus full repaint? How are you kind of making that determination?
So we'll walk with the client, and basically what we look at is what the sheen is, right? On a flat sheen paint, you're very rarely going to be able to get away with just touch-up spots. If you know how to do touch up, some of the clients will ask for a fog, which is kind of effective, but it's not really effective.
Mm-hmm.
You can do the pounce technique with a brush, but we'll go corner to corner, and then we'll match. So we'll get a color match, and how we match is we don't take a match right off of the wall. We'll take an outlet cover off, because if you take an outlet cover off, that space right behind the outlet cover typically hasn't seen daylight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be as close to the original color as you possibly can get. Then you'll match it from that, about a dime sample, take it to the paint store, match it up, and then we'll go corner to corner typically.
Okay, so staying away from any sort of touch-up paint, quote unquote, right? Like,
just spots on a wall. Because it's just
so
comes
obvious.
up,
right?
it's like a zebra after that when you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it usually works worse when we started. I've watched so many properties where the resident tried to save themselves some money and just goes through and touch up, and it's like you can see it obvious throughout the whole house, and then it's like, okay, well now we have to repaint.
Because it all depends, right? If your original paint was a true Sherwin-Williams paint, you got that from the Sherwin-Williams store. When you go to Home Depot to apply it to a bear, that's not the same codes as what Sherwin-Williams uses. So the codes are going to be different, A, and then B, 1 shot or 2 shots of X colorant is different depending on who matched that paint that day, right? So you're never going to really get it exactly as you wanted it.
Yeah.
And then just with hardeners in it and latex-based paint with hardeners,
Yeah.
a semi-gloss might not be a semi-gloss today. It might be closer to a satin, or it might be closer to a gloss.
Sure.
So.
And what about when you're estimating for a partial paint? At what point does that become a full paint? Is it like a certain amount of walls in the property?
It's all value engineering. Yeah, when you get over a certain point. So when we bid, when you bid a full paint, it's GLA, right? That's gross living area. When you're bidding a partial, that's net wall area. So in other words, if this wall is 10 feet wide by 8 feet, that's 80 square feet of net wall area, where a full repaint, if it's 1,500 square feet GLA, that's 1,500 square feet. That's what you're going to pay for. So if you can quickly add up to that 1,500 very, very quickly, so it becomes more cost effective to do a full repaint. The general rule of thumb mathematically is take your GLA, multiply it by 4, and that's the net wall area inside of that house.
Wow.
That's very complex.
And you said a word there, or 2 words that I had never. Value engineering, is that what you said?
Yeah. So
what is that?
So value engineering is basically, again, why we repair over replace, why we replace over repair. Let's value engineer it. Let's say if it's going to cost me $1.80 square foot times 1,500 square feet, that's going to be a lot better of a price than, if it's 2,000, that's 8,000 square feet, right? If we're cutting those walls and doing net wall area, you can really value engineer it. Well, it just doesn't make sense to do partial. It just makes sense, A, for market value, and then resale, to just go ahead and repaint the whole thing.
I'm going to use that word with future talks with investors.
Yeah, that sounds way smarter than what I have been saying so far. Usually, if we get to like 60% of the house that needs to be repainted, then it's time.
It's time to value engineer and say, okay, what are we really saving? Are we tripping over that $100 bill to get to a quarter? On the other side, and that's kind of the value engineering.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Where else do you see value engineering then? I'm interested in this.
Hard surfacing. When you're talking about replacing flooring, if you're going from carpeting to a hard surfacing, and typically you may just add quarter round, well, does that look really good? Or do you want to just go ahead and replace baseboard? Mm-hmm. Quick rule of thumb on baseboard, if you take your GLA, multiply it by 0.33, that's going to give you pretty much your linear foot of baseboard in the house with a 10% overage for material waste. So just quick math that you could do on the spot. Just doing this long enough, I kind of know these numbers like right off the top of my head, but it's just some quick math that you can do to say, are we really saving any money by doing this? Where again, because most contractors don't look at it that way, we know the real estate numbers, and we're going to help you come up with that repair strategy, exit strategy, and marketing strategy to get your property.
So the next time I have an investor trying to penny pinch, I can just send them to you. You'll have this conversation.
Well, we actually do what's called a quick bid. So we kind of aggregate all of our repairs. We break them down into categories. So most people will go through a house and go room by room.
Yep.
We'll actually go by category. So I'll know what I'll have to do for rough-in mechanical plumbing, final top-out, trim-out mechanical and plumbing. We aggregate and kind of separate millwork, which is cabinets, doors, casing, baseboard. We'll get all that separated relatively quickly, and then give you a quick bid, which is basically we'll have it within 24 hours, and that's best and final. What you can look at, what the construction cost is going to be of your property, and that's kind of where the value engineering really comes into play. Is it worth it? Are you really saving going sticking with laminate, or should you just do solid surfacing? Right. So it's those decisions. A 5-inch baseboard over a 3.5-inch baseboard. What's selling right now? What's moving in that market? What's moving in that zip code? And then just kind of value engineer the bid towards that way.
Speaking of flooring, like obviously carpet had been the cheapest solution for a long time.
Yep.
You've seen a lot of homes, especially rental properties, usually like a basic 25-ounce minimum
Yep.
carpet. And now, like there was some tile in the conversation. LVP seems to be all the rage nowadays. Like, what are you thinking? What are you seeing there in terms of carpet versus LVP versus tile?
So you'll go over what's moving in your area that you're investing in and what you're repairing in, and then also functionality. Right? Is it functional to have carpet in any other space but a bedroom? Typically in Arizona, it's not. It's really functional, especially in the rental space, where you're going to have maybe 2 or 3 turns per asset until you go to reposition. It's definitely more cost effective to do LVP. And with the newer type LVP, they're basically bulletproof, right? They're close to waterproof. If they're installed correctly, they'll last you for years. So we're seeing a lot of LVP in the space. Again, and it all depends on what you're doing, right? That may work in Phoenix, but probably North Scottsdale, you're going to want to go to a hard surface a tile. So
we say LVP and like being durable like that. That's mostly going to be like the click style plank boards,
click
is that
or
a
glue
plank?
down, yes
Okay.
sir. Yeah.
So not so much like the sheet that you're rolling out.
That's a sheet vinyl. Yeah.
Yeah, sheet vinyl. That's
I think the GSEs are the only people that are using that. Yeah.
What is GSE?
Government sponsored enterprise. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac.
Yeah. Okay. What do you recommend on staircases?
Either or. Carpeting typically, because sometimes LVP vinyl can be slick on a staircase, so it can be a danger
safety
factor.
hazard.
Yeah, so especially as far as a rental, it's obviously risk aversion and minimization, right? So we want to make sure that we minimize the risk. So I'd recommend carpeting on stairwells.
Yeah. Any off-gassing risks with the LVP? Like, is that all safe to be putting in your house?
Now it is, yeah. When it first came out, there were some issues with that, but now, yeah, as long as the installation is correct, yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
What kind of issues were they having with off gassing?
The products weren't really tested correctly back in the day, and other people weren't reading the MSDS sheets, so they really didn't know what they were putting in. So
some of them had formaldehyde in it, right?
That's
It
it.
was off-gassing formaldehyde
Yep.
into the house. Yeah.
Yep.
It was from China.
yeah,
A lot of the
Yep.
materials. Yeah.
Yep. And people weren't the regulations really weren't up to date. They weren't kind of up to snuff. So now it's much better than it was.
That's mildly dangerous. I'm glad you were doing your homework on that ahead of time.
Yep.
So, what are the hot topics right now in construction? Like, what are you guys talking about internally? What are the new things?
As far as just in the trades themselves,
Yeah,
for us, it's
new materials, labor issues.
yeah.
What's,
It's well, for labor issues right now. This is nationwide. Yeah, the construction industry is at a shortage of labor, especially skilled labor. There's a lot of unskilled labor, especially in the Southwest markets, but across the board, there's just a lack of interest in people that want to go into the trades. Again, typically, you don't select the trades pick you, but a lot of it is generational too. Where I'm from the East Coast, most guys are generational builders, like their fathers were builders. So they, by default, because nobody else was available after school, the kids kind of got involved in the trades, and then they kind of took over from their dads and just kind of ran the business. A lot of guys I used to work with back east, they all started when they were probably 12 to 14 years old. Not really legal, but they started when they were kids, and they just went right up through high school and just went into the trades themselves and made good lives for themselves. But across the board, that's why there's some really, really good trade school initiatives. Most people think you got to have it's applied science or a college degree, but there's a lot of good trade school opportunities. Especially there's some good union opportunities, especially when you look at the protected trades, electricians, plumbers, mechanicals, HVAC. There's some really, really good opportunities for people who want to get into the trades. And nowadays, especially with the labor shortage, it's every bit as financially. It's a financial gain to go to the trades, to be in the trades, because again, we're the people that the lawyers and doctors call when they can't figure stuff out. That's what they call.
Most of your team that I've met, they're younger guys. So what are you doing to attract these younger guys to?
Just so for me, it's letting them know that there is an option other than college, and the fun that you have, and the reward that you have. In building homes, in repairing homes. It's the biggest benefit I found going from custom home building to the REO and the renovation side of the house is I have no blueprints. I have no idea what's behind door number 1 or door number 2 until I open door number 1 or door number 2.
Find out.
And that's where you really separate the can-dos from the can-nots by the people who can engineer those repair strategies and exit strategies when an investor may have bought something on a piece of paper but had no idea what they were buying. You see that a lot. In the local market, the local smaller investor is basically trying to buy from a desk in Seattle and has no idea what they're purchasing until they get there. That's especially true in the MFR space, in the multifamily space, especially the smaller, for the quadplexes and the duplexes. Like people just don't know what they're buying. And that's where,
getting the close-up view photos, and then you get there and you look at your neighbor, you look at your other neighbor, you're like, uh-oh.
And then especially when you start going, it's not just residential, it's commercial. So you defaulted into a general commercial permit, and now you have to go through NESHAP, and most people don't know A, what that is, or B, how you go get around that obstacle.
What is that?
So NESHAP is basically environmental, so it's asbestos abatement. So you have to test surfaces for asbestos, and if it is, you have to go through the whole NESHAP process, which is abatement by a certified contractor.
And the dollar signs come into play.
Dollar signs come into play with abatement. Yeah, not so much for testing or just going through the NESHAP, because by rule, if it's commercial, it has to go through NESHAP. But the abatement is what, and the remediation is.
And why is that? It's mostly due to the precautions.
And the specialty certificates that you have to do it. Not just anybody can do it. You have to be licensed and certified to do it. Yeah. So that's where the cost comes. But that's just a lot of the stuff that people don't see. Purchasing a home, who have never worked in Arizona, or that they think it's going to be it's the gold country, but there's a lot to know. So that's kind of where we've been successful, because we're not a multi-state contractor. We're not a megalomart, right? We operate in Arizona. We understand Arizona. And our niche is right behind the big guys, right? So we have the commercial TI side too as well, but we're not Wilmeg, we're not McCarthy, right? We just, we kind of come in where those guys don't want to pretty much operate in the space, which is where we're perfectly comfortable. Because again, it's all about having synergy and cross functionality with the service offerings that we do have. So we can take what we do in the REIT, scale it to smaller commercial TI. We can scale it to an MFR build out. We can scale it to retail. Whereas the bigger guys, it's hard for them to scale down to do something in that space. For us, it's easy to scale it.
And that's just because their overhead is so high?
Their overhead is so high, yeah. Anything below a 10,000 square foot, 5,000 square foot commercial TI, it's 0 cents for them. And for us, it's right in our sweet spot. So that's where that's our spot in the space.
Back to your recruitment strategy. So are you going to the trade schools to find your next level of employees, or are you getting veterans, or what's your strategy?
I'm partial to veterans, just because the mentality is there, and the I don't know if this is the right word, but the psychology of getting in the trenches is there. The chain of command understanding is there. It's right. Part of being a good construction worker, and no matter what you're doing, is being a good employee first, right? They've gone through that fire. It's the thing with veterans is try not to laugh when they ask if you handle stress, right? That's already there, and they're usually willing to learn. When they come to you, that they want to learn a trade. They want to better themselves. So I like veterans. Trade schools, for what we do, we're not really self-performing. So most of our focus when we recruit is on people who have managed jobs in the field, or who want to learn, because we are cross-functional. We require our managers to be cross-functional, because you may be handling a small to mid-loss restoration job one day, but the next day you're on a REIT, you're on a turn. So we want guys that don't mind being cross-functional and understand the idiosyncrasies of each service offering. That's kind of.
So you're more looking for the right mentality. You're willing to do some training.
We're willing to do some training, but it's all about the mentality of your staff.
Yeah.
And again, it's willing to be cross-functional. You have to be a team player, especially as you guys know with the market that it is now. You can't just be isolated as an employee. Well, I only do this or I only do that. You're probably not going to last too long in the role.
We find the same thing in our position. Like when we first started in the industry, usually going towards the more experienced property managers because you can hire them and plug them into play, and they're like, you don't have to worry about training too much.
Yep.
They can take some weight off of your shoulders. But as we found, like a lot of times you're finding these people that have bad habits that you're having to reform, and it's really hard to like teach somebody new tricks versus finding somebody who's not experienced, maybe has some customer service
and can
experience.
be malleable, right?
Yes.
That can kind of blend to where you need them to blend. Where if you've got, I shouldn't say this because I'm turning the corner to 60, but I'm kind of set in my ways. So would I be good in a brand new startup? I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of value add with older managers who are willing to kind of learn new stuff.
I don't consider myself too old. I'm only 36 now, and I feel the same way. Like if I were to be inserted in a company now, I'm like, I'm probably not going to do things their way. I'm going to want to do it my way.
Right.
So
yeah, that's it. Yeah. Especially operationally speaking, because just doing this so long, I know what works. So we can kind of, we can skip over the precursors and get right to the meat of the bone. Because
let me tell you 12 reasons why your way's not.
Why? Yeah. And that's the value add that you bring, right? We've tried it before. It's just not working. So
yeah. For the training and development part then, so are they shadowing a more experienced person or are you letting them
No, typically, yeah. So what we do the first week is basically just introducing them to our ERP because we use a server-based ERP. We don't use a cloud-based ERP. So it's introducing them to that, and then it's actually 2 to 3 weeks of ride-along. So we have handbooks, basically overall position, how you handle a job when it's in WIP, how you handle a job when it's delayed, and then it's just out into the field. We'll send them with all the aspects too. So we'll send them with the large loss guys, medium loss guys. We'll send them on some REITs. We'll send them on some REO stuff, just so they get a really good feel of what their day-to-day like. Because our core processes, applications, and techniques are the same, no matter the service offering. Once they get that down, it's just basically the experience of the idiosyncrasies of each client, right? Why a home ladder is different than an REO America, right?
Yeah.
Why a Fannie Mae is different than a Main Street.
Yeah.
So that's just the handling that aspect of the project management.
What's the current size of your team?
So we have across both verticals, we're probably 15 employees.
15.
15. Yeah.
Nice. What are the long-term plans for the companies?
Growth. So we like to get stabilized in the restoration side, and then we kind of like to go bump out to a Southwest footprint, and then maybe go nationwide after that. Because most of our clients are really impressed with how we handle things, how we manage jobs. And like, boy, we could really use you in this market and that market and the other market, but we're just not comfortable reaching out into the space because again, we don't want to lose the value add that we are by trying to get bigger than we should be or too fast.
What's your next market?
Probably Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Yep. Texas, Mexico, Nevada.
Great growth opportunities. Lots of REITs.
And it's multiple clients are in that state and have asked us the same question. Yep. So
going where your clients already are, that you're going to
where we can already perform. Because you're probably $150,000, $200,000 to go into a market. So you're going to need that book of business. Just to get that costing recouped before they go.
Does that mean you'd be on an airplane managing these new markets? Or
typically, Again, with Charter, that's what I did. I would go out into the markets 1 week a month. Typically, I was gone. So I would go, the Illinois market, so it's Chicago and then Peoria, and then you're back for 3 weeks. Then it's off to the East Coast market. So you're flying into Philly. You're in Bucks, in Chester, and Philadelphia counties. The next day, you're up in the Poconos. And then after that, you're driving down to Princeton, New Jersey. You're working North Jersey, then South Jersey. Then you're driving to Baltimore, where you're working the Maryland market. So you're up north, and then you're down in PG County. And then you're flying into West Virginia. So it's just a constant. It's a constant move.
Yeah.
Well, Travers.
We know from our industry too, you're only as good as your contractors, or in your case, your subcontractors, that's right? So if you were to expand, is that your role to find the subcontractors and then nurture those relationships?
So we
or are you going to find a local guy to?
No, we would do it through. So we kind of have a certain way that we like to vet our contractors. Mm-hmm. We just don't get their onboarding paperwork, get their license, and okay, you're starting. We put contractors in a probationary period, so they're going to run 3 or 4 jobs. We're going to get feedback from the PMs. We're going to get feedback from the peer-to-peer relationships that we have. Your PMs will say, how did you like the last crew that you had in the house? How did they do? Was their communication good? Was the quality of work good? Were they done on time? Did they push schedule? Did they not push schedule? So we put our crews in probationary periods and everybody on to full-time status. So it would be our vendor manager, and then I would go to originally set them up.
What's the attrition rate look like there? Like how often do you bring folks on and they just don't make it out of that probation period?
In Arizona, we've had probably, I'd say maybe 20, maybe 15 to 20% of guys that just, because it's, again, with what the industry rate is, you're typically bringing on guys who may have been handymen or were working for other contractors for years and decided this is the way that I want to go. I want to go out and strike out on my own. So you're working through those rough patches together. Again, it's a totally different skill set, as we talked about earlier, between installing that carpet and then managing people who install carpet.
Right.
So that's kind of the growth that they have. But the beauty of it is you really build a lot of good relationships because you grow together. And in my experience, especially in the East Coast markets, they never forget that. No matter how big they get, they don't forget the value add and the relationships that you had. So they're always going to answer the phone when you call.
Goes back to what we say, this industry is all about relationships.
It's all about relationships, and it's all about face-to-face. Sorry, iBuyers, but it is what it is. And this has always been face-to-face, and this has always been a handshake industry. It's always going to be that way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You guys are just down the road from us. We've been to your office. You have a beautiful office. You obviously spent plenty of time here. It's been a great relationship for us.
Yeah, we've enjoyed the partnership with you for sure.
Yeah.
So we really, really appreciate everything.
And you work with individual owners and property management companies?
We do.
Okay.
Yep. So we work with PMGs, smaller investors, large investors, group investors, and we just want to make sure that we're a good fit for you. We may not be a good fit for you if you've got where you like to handle. Our value add is that we take away the headaches of construction so you can just go make that next big deal, right? So that's where we want you to focus your time on. Most people that try to handle construction themselves, they may do it a time or two. We actually just had a local investor that thought he was going to handle the construction himself, and a few panicked phone calls into it, and he kind of realized that, I'm just going to go look for that next big deal because this just isn't working out.
You specialize when they're ready to turn the project over to you and let you handle it, but not so much if they're a micromanager, right? That's taking away your value.
If you're not dealing with people who understand, again, the real estate side of construction, and we're privately held, we're well funded, so you don't need to cut us a check every 4 days.
Right.
A lot of the guys that chuck in the trucks, they need to get paid every 4 days. Or they're not.
Call me like I sent the invoice yesterday. Can I pick up a check today?
I thought you were a contractor.
Yeah.
So
you shouldn't need a half down payment on a $4,000 job.
Yeah, this isn't. I'm not a staffing service. That's not what I do here.
Right.
So that's the problem with most investors, and they you can see some rehabilitations get out of control very, very quickly. So if they're not keeping an eye on it, and that's kind of where the value add that we add. We'll take care of the construction. We'll take care of we'll scope it for you. We'll cost it for you. We'll position it for you with you, and then let us take over the construction part of it because that's what we handle. That's what we handle.
It's been amazing learning about your company today, Dean. If people want to get in touch with either Valley Services Restoration or Valley Services Construction, how can they get in touch?
ValleyServices.com, or you can call me direct, 480-268-4682, or dmccarthy@myvalleyservices.com. You can also place any request to us at orders@myvalleyservices.com or claims@myvalleyservices.com if you want to reach the restoration side.
Awesome.
Happy to help.
Thank you so much, Dean.
You bet. Thank you, fellas. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet.